All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. My name is Jack. This is
And
my
I'm Daniel.
and we're going to be talking a little bit tonight about relationships. And Daniel, we just coming off of a holiday, and so I think we're going to have plenty to talk about in terms of relationships and how they're kind of an opening to our spiritual practice. So, but first, I'd love to check in with that. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's been an interesting last couple of weeks. I've had quite a few people coming in and out of my house, staying with me and whatnot. That's been really pleasant and relationship building, if you will. As far as my practice or my training goes, it's kind of interesting. I had this experience that I think probably everyone in our sangha has probably had on multiple occasions, but it was pretty pronounced for me. So my practice had started getting a little bit wobbly, my home practice, my personal practice. And so I was getting just a little bit, like, it was not quite as consistent. Consistency to me is like the most important part of it. And it was beginning partially because of the people coming and going and schedule being thrown off, but also just because of resistance. Like, they were both there, right? So the resistance sort of made it easier to be like, well, yeah.
Family, people are here. So yeah.
Exactly. So I went like that. And then I noticed that I I started getting into a little bit more like agitated stage, or like not even that, just sort of like I get maybe a little bit depressed or something like that, like just a negative sort of place. Not like super pronounced, but just like it was there. And then I went and had darshan with Lama, and it was like just like everything just got like recharged, right? Like it was the coolest thing. Like I was like, wow, okay. I walked out feeling, well, all kinds of things, but partially feeling charged. And then, like I got right back into my practice. It's nice and consistent. I haven't had a lot of time to really speak of consistency, but it feels really good. So anyway, it was just such a nice experience, to feel that sort of charging.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, I've had a couple experiences like that with darshan, or even just attending like a meditation, or meeting with sangha, and it's like it'll just really kind of like hit the reset button. And I think especially meeting with lama or teacher, I think that connection with the spiritual mentor can really it's so powerful. And so, our spiritual mentor, when we open ourselves to that dynamic, that relationship, it can be such a powerful thing. And so when we then meet with that person, it's like, yeah, it's like it kind of reminds me of everything that I'm doing this for,
Right.
and just so it's just very motivating. And it's kind of like all of the like delusion trips that I'm having about like, oh, I can't do this, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I suck at this. It just all goes out the door, and it's like, yeah, it almost just feels kind of silly, that stuff. Yeah. So that's really sweet. I'm glad you had that little moment.
Nice. How are things going for you?
Things are good. Yeah, things are interesting. I'll definitely talk more about holiday stuff as we talk about relationships, but as far as my practice and my training, I also really value consistency. That's kind of I consider my meditation non-negotiable now. It's it's not even like a where it feels like I'm forcing it. It's just like, no, I literally now that I've had, practice and doing this every day, and then having days when I don't, or periods that I'm less active in it, I recognize just what it's doing, the benefit that it's having. And so I just don't stop doing it consistently. But I think it did take some time for me to get there. Definitely resistance. But I find that I'm like, I guess having a little bit more like pleasurable experiences in meditation. Shamatha is kind of always just hard for me. So shamatha is, the single pointed meditation. So like what I typically do is I just focus on my breathing. That's always hard. Like it's actually pretty rare for me to have a moment that I experience like some sustained like contentment, which is fine. Like I'm just kind of accepting that for where it's at. I continue to show up and do it and try and apply kind of the antidotes to the challenges that I'm facing within that meditation. But in the other types of meditation that I do, which are like some like guru yoga or like deity practices, that's really where I'm finding like a lot of juice, like a lot of energy, and like and moments of just kind of like serene connection. And so that's been really fun to see. And I've been doing a Tara practice pretty much every day for the last month, but skipping a day here or there. And it just gets better. It's so interesting. I thought that I would like start getting bored by it.
Right. Yeah.
But somehow it just like keeps deepening. Like it gets this kind of like richness to it, where I'm like, okay, this poem at the end of the sadhana that I thought was kind of weird and like, I didn't really relate to it. It was kind of lofty, like praising Tara and all her different qualities. And so I used to just kind of breeze through that, right? And like, I'm almost at the end. I got to get through here. But now it's like, I really visualize all the different Taras that the poem talks about. And it's a little bit more like, ooh, like there's just more zhuzh there. Like I want to be there longer, which I feel like that's a good place to be.
That sounds really positive.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad that's working out that way for you.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
So how does this relate to your Thanksgiving? I think.
Oh, yeah. You mean like Tara or?
Yeah, all your practice. So you're doing all this training, right?
Yeah.
Right, and then Thanksgiving provides you with an opportunity to perform and to practice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was it like?
Well, I think it really is it's working, because so I tend to be a pretty, left-leaning person politically. I'm guessing that people didn't have to wonder about that. So, and my family tends to be very conservative. And they seem to be kind of, leaning farther and farther right, conservative, as they age and as, politics just get more divided these days. And so I knew that going in, but I didn't quite know like how much, how kind of intense that was going to be. And there were moments, and I guess I could talk about it, now more in depth, and we can kind of segue into relationships and whatnot. But moments where I felt like if I didn't have my training, I knew that if I didn't have my training, I would be boiling with anger, like boiling. And what instead happened was that I could recognize that I was having a response, physically, emotionally, and just kind of see that it's there and be like, yep, that's happening. And that makes sense because this is a kind of like a moment that would make me angry. But I was able to, and I wouldn't even say tame it. It was just like, that's there, and I'm going to choose a different approach. And I really was thinking about Tara, and in this specific moment, I was in the car with my sister and my dad. My sister and I are very similar politically, and we try not to talk about political stuff too much with our dad, but
Right.
sometimes it just comes up.
Yeah.
And there was this moment he was telling us about some weird joke that was like about what Elon Musk should have done to all his Twitter employees that, eventually left. And it was just not a funny joke. It was very violent and rude and not funny.
Right. Yeah. As conservative jokes tend to be.
Yeah. And then I made an unskillful response. So I just said like, Elon Musk sucks, and that was kind of like I was releasing a little bit of like I wanted to poke a little bit,
Yeah.
So I recognized that had happened. And a couple minutes down the road, as we were talking, I came back to, I apologized, like, hey, I recognize that, I said something kind of whatever, just a little silly. And here's what I think I was really trying to say. And then I was able to share that, with the changes that have happened at Twitter and like less, kind of tracking really negative hate speech and whatnot, that it's become even more of like a cesspool of like, speech that's really hateful towards minorities, including, genderqueer people. And it was really wild. It was like 0 to 100. My dad got so mad.
Ooh, you stepped in a hornet's nest.
Like he really, I haven't seen him this mad in a long time. And just there was some sensitivity there. And so I think that's what I really touched in on, was that, okay, I'm not going to react to the stuff he's saying that I, find outlandish and kind of absurd, which is what I would have done in the past, right? I would have been like targeting all of these kind of like what he's putting up as defenses, right?
That's right. You'd knock each one of them down.
Right. That's what I would try and do. I would, fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
But what instead I really noticed tapping into that kind of Tara energy of like, oh, wow, this person, my father, is suffering so much here. Yeah. Like I didn't need to listen to any of the content of what he was saying, right? Because it was just like, there's so much hurt here, so much suffering. And
it's a symptom of the problem, right? So there's no need to go looking and analyzing the symptoms too closely.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's where I'm starting to become more skillful, is that I can really just see the suffering rather than, trying to make it about me, really.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what you see the suffering, you see it, and then what was there a response, or did you just be quiet, or what?
So I noticed I really worked on kind of quieting my response, my language. I even used some like physical touch, like just gentle, light physical touch. And really made it known that I was hearing him, and that I wasn't judging him. And I think it was really more just like, okay, how am I holding myself, how am I using my body and my speech to just connect rather than disconnect. And I think if I had like fully enlightened, Tara qualities, I'd be able to, actually support my dad in like relieving some of that suffering. And maybe I did, that's possible too. But yeah, it was just really, it was interesting to watch. And I think something that was good too is that I didn't feel like I needed to jump in and save him too.
Right.
Like, okay, you're having your experience right there, and I'm with you. I see it, I feel it, and I want you to be relieved of that suffering, and I don't need to make it my own experience.
That's right. That's right. Oh, how cool is that? I love it. No, Jack, I think you might, I don't think you need to wait. I think you might already be Tara. So I have this
That's
little,
the idea. We all are, right?
right, right. Well, it was interesting because I was thinking about relationships, and when I think about like Buddhism and relationships, I oftentimes go to things that Thich Nhat Hanh had said while he was alive, right? And I just remember there was this one thing that he said. It really hit home for me, and it's exactly what you did. He said, I got it written down here. The most precious gift we can offer others is our presence. When mindfulness embraces those we love, they will bloom like flowers. But I think that right, you didn't try to fix him. You didn't try to fight him to tear down all the perceptions or all of that. None of that, right? You didn't even try to like clean his window or any of it. You just were there and present with it, and I can imagine that just like as opposed to the person that he knew, the Jack that he knew in the past, he might have been actually readying his defensives, right? Getting ready, like, oh shit, here comes my kid. They're gonna battle me. I've got two of them in the car with me, and they're gonna right. So you could almost like maybe like you could feel like that sort of pumping up, like, oh, here they come, like we're gonna duke it out like we always have. And then instead, here is just this gentle presence that's like, hey, I see you're suffering. I don't want you to be suffering. And that's that, right? Like that as the opposite of whatever has happened in the past is freaking beautiful. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And no doubt it was healing and helpful.
I hope so. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah. It definitely the conversation ended on a note that it wouldn't have,
That's right.
a few years ago.
That's right.
So
That's
great.
gorgeous.
Oh, I want to hear about some of your relationship stories, maybe from the week, if you have any. Any
Well, I
Thanksgiving.
think one of the sort of important things about relationships is recognizing how we like project what we know about others or what we think about others onto them and make it real. Like they are that person we think they are.
Yes.
When in fact, there's no such thing. It's not, it can't be, it just is what it is at that moment, right? And I had that experience on Thanksgiving Day. So I didn't actually celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday. I did that with my kids on Saturday.
Mhm.
But on Thursday, my brother's son, my nephew, was visiting. He's 20 years old. And the last few times that I've seen him, he's been in a rough place, like just wild and, ready to like break everything himself and the world, and oh my gosh, I was so, the last few times I was just like, man, this is going to be a rough life for him. It's going to take him like decades to work his way out of all of this nonsense. I couldn't even fathom that he wouldn't be the same sort of person, right?
Yeah.
And what showed up at my door was a completely different being, completely different, right? It wasn't some of the intensity that was still there, but it had it matured, and there he'd had some life experiences and stuff that had sort of had informed his opinions and whatnot. And I was so inspired and so just like, I was just so happy, like when he left, I was like, wow, quick transformation is possible. This, lightning, I'm not suggesting that he was lightning diamond anything, but I'm just saying that like that kind of like quick kind of transformation. We don't have to necessarily wait decades or multiple lifetimes or whatever to accomplish our goals, right? And to be a little bit clearer, at the very least, to be a little bit more awake and a little bit more present. And so that was really like, I loved it, right? Like, so being able to just be with him as he was, and allowed me to see what was going on there, right? And it was such a positive thing for me, to see that. And maybe it's just it's just a function of age, possibly, right? Like young people are changing faster than old people appear to change, that kind of thing. But man, it was really, really inspiring. And then second to that, same kind of thing with my kids, like they like being with them. If like I notice, they tell me a lot of times, for example, how other people in their lives kind of maintain an image of who they are. You're always like this. You were like this like a kid, and now you're going to be like this now, and this, whatever. There's all these sort of like ways that, are the people in our lives tell us who we are and how we're going to be, and there's so much resentment that builds up because nobody wants to be put into a corner or to be, defined in this sort of self-limiting way. Like people really resent that. They want to be seen for who they are, what they are right now. And so I'm really grateful to be able to do that. I'm not saying that I do it with any great skill, but I noticed that it's in, like when especially the younger people that I talk to, they really appreciate that, right? That it's just that there's some allowing them just to be what they are, and there's no telling them what they are. I think that's really, it's helped me a lot in my relationships because I definitely in the past have projected a lot onto people in my life and turned them into like, they are this, that's who they are, and they're always like that. No. And that's just bullshit. It's not true. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help them. It doesn't foster any kind of meaningful connection. If anything, it's just resentment, animosity, divisiveness.
Yeah. All the things that we don't want in our relationships.
Yeah.
So you got to just be open for several kids in your life, young people in your life, and just get to experience who they are in this moment.
And they seem to really appreciate that opportunity to be seen, to be witnessed without any type of sort of like modification or attempts at like telling them anything about themselves, right? And it comes on the heels. Actually, I went to on last Sunday, I went to open meditation at the temple, and it was being led by Sabrina. And one of the things that she mentioned at the end of the meditation, she was talking about right speech and, how can we use the holidays as an opportunity, to exercise right speech. And there was a person there who said, I don't know how, everything I say, every word that comes out of my mouth is just an opinion. So how can I ever have right speech, if all I am is just full of opinions, and nobody likes them. And it triggered something in me. I was like, right. Nobody likes my stinky opinions, right? Like, I've never met a person. I mean, sometimes if they ask for it, but most of the time, like whatever things I have to say that are my judgment about others and the state of affairs in the world, other people aren't generally very receptive to that. But they are incredibly receptive of being asked and, like have a genuine interest in their own opinions.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And so it actually, I think that it's this great opportunity. Like I was actually actively working on that. Just shut up, Daniel. Like, just like be like what you did with your dad, right? Like I see you, be present, hear them, be there, but it doesn't mean I have to say something.
Yeah. And then it's like I feel like when people are met with that kind of presence and there's like this way that our curiosity in that dynamic can open up for that person. Just that experience of like, oh, I get to share who I am, be who I am, talk about things that I like. Because so often, in conversation, it's really apparent that the other person is just like waiting to respond and like, coming up with like what they want to say. Right. And so when that's not happening, it's like really beautiful.
It's a lot like a game. Have you ever played the Minesweeper game on Windows?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So to me, it feels like like that type of gentle, just like exploration of other people, rather than like trying to present myself somehow. It's a little bit like the game of Minesweeper, because like a gentle question or like an invitation, this curiosity is like placing the little, it's like clicking the things, right? And like in the beginning, like, there's this sort of apprehension. There's only so much that you can kind of see with each click. But sometimes what'll happen is like you click, you ask a question or say, the conversation about them leads to this, all of a sudden, this expansion, boom.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, whoa. And
Yeah.
they're having that same, sometimes they're having that same thing happening inside of them, where they're like, whoa, I didn't realize. It's self-illuminating, right? Like they can see something about themselves in those moments, and that they may not have seen if there was this back and forth that was constant, that was happening in the conversation. So I kind of feel like it's really quite a beautiful thing to watch people open up, because I love this experience. You could take literally any human being on the planet. There's nobody that's exempt from this. And if you just be with them, right, and have a curious interest in what this thing is, they'll reveal themselves. And it's always something completely different than you thought it was.
Oh yeah, always big time. Yeah. It's interesting, because at my job, at the psychiatric units, there's so many times where I am just like blown away at some of the things that people share, and like the philosophical minds.
Oh, I bet you do.
Have, and it's just so amazing, because I really get to see my own personal biases very strongly. And just like you were saying about how we kind of just impose our assumptions and, ideas about what a person is. And so often it's based on, what I see in their chart as their diagnosis, or something that they did, or, maybe even, people who have a sex offender status.
Exactly.
And so there's all these people who, when I read their chart, I only get a little piece of it. And sometimes it's scary. And so I'll immediately kind of go into that situation thinking I know the person.
Right.
And sure enough, of course, there's like, just such massive life there,
Right.
And so often, especially people who are, at the psychiatric hospital, there's a lot of trauma and abuse, and so there's for so many people, there's like this shutdown that's happened. And whether it be like with a staff person like me or another peer on the unit, if you're really able to connect, it's amazing what just true connection can bring out of people. And I think some of the most brilliant minds that I've ever encountered have been at that hospital, because people really have a deep experience of just the sorrow that samsara can be, right? And when we can allow people to talk about their experience of samsara, and also not even just the bad stuff, like allowing ourselves to come out and just feel safe and open. It's just, it's incredible.
I think that's maybe what Thich Nhat Hanh meant when he said that, our presence with others makes them bloom like flowers. I think that's better than the mind sweeper analogy. they bloom, right? When we stay with them, they bloom. That's I must be kind of hard, actually. I can only imagine that when you see such wisdom, talent, whatever you want to call it, just intelligence, raw intelligence sometimes, that it must be a little bit sort of like, oh man, you're all locked up in here. That sucks. The world would really benefit from you if you weren't locked up.
Right. Locked up, or, when they get out, having the circumstances that they do.
Well, they're still locked up, in their head, like a lot. I mean, whether you're in a, you're committed or not committed, there's still sort of this locking up that happens.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's what there's, I don't know who said it, but maybe I don't know if who I got this from, but what I've come to realize is that I want to be as safe a person as I can be for anyone who comes into contact with me, whether that's at work or that's just someone on the bus. I want to, that's what I feel like I'm, doing here, like as a practitioner, is I'm trying to become a safe person. And I maybe that was in kind of conversation as I was like, figuring out, like, do I want to take the refuge vows? Do I want to like stop drinking? Do I want to, try my best to stop lying or stealing? And so I think that was when the conversation came up about, we're just becoming safer.
Yeah.
Not even, that we have to become safe right away, but just that I'm becoming safer.
Right.
And that, that safety, that feeling of safety that we can provide another person, I think is when the bloom can start. Yeah.
Provide the right causes and conditions for the blooming.
Yeah.
So true.
Oh man. Well, we've really gotten into some family relationships, maybe friends, and I'm curious, like maybe we could talk a little bit about sangha and kind of the relationship that we have with sangha.
Yeah. I'm kind of that's one area where I am experiencing a lot of meaningful connection and surprising sort of connection. Just the more that I stick around and the more that engaged I am, the more involved I am, the more that I rub shoulders with and talk to and engage with other Sangha members. And I think so much of the teaching, so much of the guru principle is manifested through Sangha members. Like I've learned just so much, right? Both from like the words that people speak, but also just the way they are. So for example, this thing that you practice with your dad, and is the same, and that we're talking about this being present and not necessarily needing to like be talking or trying to fix the problem or whatever. Like I've witnessed that in Sangha members directed, like with me, with myself, right? Where sometimes it actually, in the beginning especially, it would kind of unnerve me. And I'm not saying everybody does this, but certainly some of the members, like I get that, like especially in the beginning, I got this feeling where I'm like, whoa, you're seeing a little bit, like I could tell that you're looking a little too close, right? Like you can see through me, and I don't like. There's something about that I like. It attracted me, but it also unnerved me. It made me feel a little bit like, oh my, like is there, like what's going on here, right? Because there are these times just where like people are very, very, very present and paying attention to whatever's coming out of my mouth. And then it makes me feel even more like, kind of like, oh, I better just stop talking. So there's that aspect. There's like the learning, like so much, I don't know how many sort of pithy pieces of wisdom roll around in my head and get expressed every day that came from Sangha members. Somebody says something either like, hey, this is something, a meditative technique, or even just, expounding on some particular, Dharma point, or even sometimes it's just some, just a random thing that they say, and then it just sits there and it like echoes around, right? Like I can sense it's still there, and it has this it can have this transformative quality, the same type, same kind of transformative quality that all the learning does. And so like I'm really grateful to the Sangha for teaching me not just with words.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well, where there's this way that the more I spend time with Sangha, I think the more I can kind of see a little bit of my own stuff. And I think that's and it's funny. I mean, I in ways that feel, like you said, like a little bit unnerving, where it's like I'm not sure I'm ready to expose that about myself. And but I think that's really what we're doing. Like Lama always says, like we're we need to be transparent.
Yeah.
And so something that I really recognize in in spending time with sangha and going to talks and whatnot is that I'm constantly thinking about, like, how could I do what that person's doing and do it better. Like, I have a really competitive mind, and it's not even that I want to do that, but it's just like, I know it's like the chatter that I hear in the back of my mind, or the thoughts and whatnot, that it's like, wait, am I trying to figure out how to do like that, what that person's an expert in? Why am I trying, like, why am I trying to figure out how to do that? And why do I want to find fault too in people? And so there's this kind of like, it's almost like I can like shine, it's like I'm shining a spotlight, and there's this like little like devilish thing, that's, like, squirming around in my brain, like hiding there, and it's like trying to get away and be all sneaky and like manipulative and gross and whatnot. And really it's just this like super self-serving part of my mind that is highly egotistical, really, really, really prideful, and has that kind of like, I don't know, there's just this quality to that little demon inside me that is really vacuous, and it's kind of exhausting. And it doesn't, to not just relish in like the good qualities of other people and the abilities of people and my sangha members, just without a remainder of like, oh, what does this have to do with me? Right. Like, it's just this such, it can be really just gross. It can feel gross. So that's been fantastic to see, right? That it's like, because our sangha, and I think a lot of sanghas, there's really interesting people that show up, right?
Very interesting people.
Like, we've got some really rad people, really talented, really accomplished, very smart, intellectual people, and really humble too, like they're, and so those are a lot of things that, because I have both pride and low self-esteem, because I think those are two sides of the same coin, pride and low self-esteem, that initially felt very intimidating to me.
Yes.
But I was still ready to show up and be like, okay, but like, what the hell is this,
Right.
And so that's been really cool, just to be like, oh yeah, sangha is, not just about like learning from each other in a very direct way. It's also these indirect ways that we're just getting like our shit thrown out there.
Oh my God. It's funny. It just so happens, this wasn't part of my preparation or anything, but I happen to have right next to me this little pamphlet called the
it's so good.
Bodhisattva Vinaya of Lion's Roar Dharma Center. And I'm just going to hold it one more time up to the mirror, because I want you to see what it says, if you can.
A mirror, a window, a door, a home.
Right. And I think that you talked about the mirror-like qualities.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's so fascinating to me, but I think the mirror is just others. I don't think that it's necessarily within the sangha. I think that the sangha members are exquisite mirrors because they're so well polished, many of them. But there is this, like you said, there's this sort of reflection back, right? But what I love about it, the difference between mirrors in the outside world and mirrors in the sangha, is that they're accompanied. It's accompanied by this genuine desire for my well-being, for me. Like they're trying to get out of there. We're in the same place. We're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to get out of our own way, right? Like, and to polish things up and to see more clearly. And so because of that, because they're applying all of the same kinds of tools, and some of them have so much more experience with it, it's really helpful, right? Like, it's super duper helpful to me to be able to see some of these things, like the same kinds of things like you were talking about. I noticed like envy, where I'm like, oh, I want what that person has. And sometimes it's their it's how they are, right? Like it's not necessarily, it's not like a possession or something, but like it's their like characteristics. Like I want to be like that, you know. And then I realized like, oh no, that's inspiring. I don't need to be comparing and contrasting. I you know, like that's not necessary. But I can relish, I can love the fact that they are that way, that exists in the world is great, and I can be inspired by it and say like, yeah, this shit really works. I can see it. Look at that. Look at my friends. Like I can watch them as they clean polish their mirror. I see that this stuff works, right? I think it's really cool. I love it. And I think that the window aspect of it, or, you know, the window aspect of it, the way I sort of think about it, I don't know anything about what it actually means, but my sense is this, like, this transparency that you're talking about. Right?
Sure,
Being able to see through all the way through, right? Like on one case where it's being reflected, but in other cases, just there's nothing there, right? Like you just see the sky through the window, and that's gorgeous too. You know, when you experience that in another, I haven't really experienced that so much in outside of the sangha, you know, but definitely within, there's been moments where I'm like, that's what that is.
Oh, I really, there's so much joy in what you're saying, you know, and I think that's really beautiful, because that is what we can, you know, feel about sangha and other people, you know, people outside of the sangha too.
Totally, yeah.
You can really like see someone and be like, wow, that is brilliant that those qualities exist, and that person is bringing those qualities out. And then there's no reason to be envious. There's no reason to have jealousy, because those are the qualities that I have in me too. And
exactly,
we're doing this, we're engaging in the practices, we're doing the studies, the meditation. And so all of that, like, we're just, you know, maybe we're just not quite at the stage that they're at, but we can look ahead and think, that's so exciting, you know.
I can look up the mountain and I can be like, look, there's Jac, look, Jac can make it, I can make it, like that, right?
Yeah, so that really helps me a lot, because I think I just you know, probably from many lifetimes, but even, you know, in this lifetime, I've had such a competitive spirit, and I think it's partly because I have an older sibling who I just was like constantly fighting with for attention and praise and clout and whatnot. Not so much, not anymore, but you know, as a child, and so it's just such a relief, right, to set that stuff down. To not have to compete with our friends.
Right.
Oh God.
Right. Exactly. What a great relief, where we don't have to, nope, none of that's needed, right? Yep. And when you witness their glory, you're just like, yeah, good. There's proof that there's goodness. Oh, it's possible, right? Like, yeah, exactly that. I have a question for you though. Yeah. So how do you mostly benefit, given that you're physically far removed from the temple at the least? I know that, you know, we have sangha members, you know, throughout the country, but like how do you connect with sangha members, and how do you enjoy, I mean, I know we're doing this, right? Like this is I love this, right? Like this is I like my relationship with you. Thank you very much for that. But I'm just curious, how do you rely on sangha? How do you take refuge in sangha?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for asking. So there's like the direct ways, right? Like how we're doing, and then, you know, I meet with Lama once a month on the phone, and you know, there's a few sangha members that I keep in touch with pretty frequently. So that's like the very direct way. But there's this way that like, and you know, I go to temple on Sundays, but there's this way that I feel like when I'm active in my training, particularly with tantric practices, and when I'm visualizing the refuge tree, which the refuge tree is like my guru, the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. And I visualize that every morning as I'm doing my prayers. And there's this kind of way that I'm just like always with you all.
Yeah.
We're, and you're always with me. And yeah, so I really love I love that idea. And I think Lama also reminds me pretty frequently that, you know, like I'm not doing any of these meditations alone.
Yeah.
I'm not, for one, I'm not like a cowboy bodhisattva in training, you know, like I'm doing this with the Sangha, even if I am far away. And so really just knowing that deeply, and even, you know, visualizing people in my space and doing this with me. One thing that was really cool in the compassion retreat that Venerable Choki gave in, gosh, I think it was in June, which is like incredible that it was that long ago. But we did this one Tonglen practice where I was sitting across from another person, a Sangha member, and we were imagining, you know, doing the Tonglen practice of receiving that person's suffering and then sending back love, compassion, joy, and all of the stages of the path to enlightenment so that they could be free from suffering. And so I was, you know, doing the visualization for that person who was in front of me and really getting into it. And there was also time where we were asked to make eye contact with them too. So there's this kind of like level of deep intimacy and connection.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of that meditation, I remembered that, like, okay, it's not just me sitting here doing this for a static person. They're doing it for me. And there was this like really kind of deep, like, great gratitude. Like I felt really grateful that she was sitting there with me and visualizing in the same intensity that I was for her, and really, and I could see it, you know, I could see that she was doing that for me. And so I come back to that every once in a while where I'll remind myself, like, there's other people doing this. And sometimes I think literally for me, but for all of us.
Right.
And so that's a really powerful way for me to reconnect with Sangha, is just by remembering that there's so many of us doing these practices and thinking about each other and loving each other. And it's really, really cool.
That's one of the things that as I become more engaged with the Sangha, one of the things that is so pleasant for me. So I'm a bit of a loner, right? Like on my own. Like I'm not into maintaining lots of social relationships or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so for the most part, like if I get a message, a ding or something on my phone, it's usually like family. There might be friends, but you know, like not much, right? And what's interesting is nowadays I notice, I just like yesterday, I was just like, man, my phone just keeps blowing. There's like all this, like just people, like they're all like mostly Sangha members, not all, right? But they all, because of the Sangha, like my social group has grown a lot, you know. And so I get this really like palpable feeling of support, right? Like where I'm like, wow, I'm reminded on a daily basis, like I'm really connected to these people, like in such a way that like they're like you said, there are so many wonderful, exceptional people that I would not have anything to do with if I were left to my own devices. I wouldn't even encounter them, right? Because I'd be, you know, pursuing whatever my own worldly dharma, so to speak, right? And I wouldn't encounter them. And yet here I am, I'm blessed with like amazing artists in my life, healing, you know, people that are healers of various types, people who are really skilled in all kinds of, you know, worldly and spiritual activities. And they're all willing to like give to me as much as I'm willing to receive. you know, like I'm no, like it's the most amazing thing, you know, and we can rely on each other. We can walk each other home, so to speak. I had a, you know, I had this experience fairly recently where, so I was, you know, I haven't taken refuge yet, but I'm planning on it. And part of taking refuge are these vows. You know, I'm really concerned about maintaining sobriety, right? It's something that I found quite difficult, particularly just mainly I smoke a lot of weed, or it's like a thing, right? It's like this, yeah. And so, and I was like, no, like I really, you know, like I'm so ready to be done with it, but I know I need support. That's how, you know, that's how recovery works, right? We help each other. And it's really beautiful. You know, Lions Roar has this, you know, recovery, you know, program that's really helpful, but it's still just a program, you know, still something that you just go to and then leave. And it was interesting. I had this idea rolling around in my head for a while where I was like, I need to actually like reach out and like, and get like a buddy, you know, somebody that I can like talk to when shit goes south, you know, and I'm just not feeling it. And it was just the coolest experience that I had. You know, like I just happened to be talking to this person that I've been thinking about, and it was like, hey, you know, hey, this is what's going on. I just was like, blah, just like I did here, right? Like, here's what's going on. I'm really worried about this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I know I need somebody. I don't know who to ask, but I thought of you. And they were like, wow, like, thanks. Like, hell yeah, let's do this thing. Like, of course, right? Like, like, we're in, let's do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was such a, like, it was such an uplifting and supportive experience. And it's just one of many. It's not the only one. And it has to do with this willingness to be transparent, right? And the willingness, even so, one of the things I had written down here, these 4 mantras that Thich Nhat Hanh recommends for relationships. We have a few minutes. Can I tell you?
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear.
He does. There's a great. If any of this is interesting, the source of the article or the writing about these 4 mantras is helpful as well. But the first one, this is in relationship with other people. So the first part, and some of it we've already talked about, in particular, like what you did with your dad there. One of them is, you know, the first step saying, darling, I am here for you. Just like that. You become real, your partner becomes real, you know, whoever they are, right? Whoever you're engaging with. And then the next one was, I know you're there and I'm happy, right? You recognize the other person and you're sharing this recognition and appreciation for the being.
Yeah.
And the third mantra is, darling, I know you suffer. That's why I'm here for you. All right, that's good. That's good. And this is the part. This is the hard one. Darling, I suffer. Please help. Right. And it's that last one, right? Like, so there's so much benefit in sangha and in relationships with others, all of these relationships. But an important part of it that I feel in my own personal experience that I find such difficulty with is the transparency in saying like, yeah, I'm just a weak, this, whatever. I have these faults. I don't know what to do with them. I could use some help. And then in come all these bodhisattvas, ready. These taras, green Tara shows up. She's, you know, she was ready for action. And she just like, boom, is there, right? Yeah. But I have to sort of like, I have to initiate that somehow, right? Yeah. And it's so easy when other people when other people want help from us, oh yeah, we're ready and eager. But there's this other part, right, which is about setting down that pride, and you know, letting go of that, and because that's so much of this ego shit that we got to let go, right? Is like that tightly holding on to all this stuff.
I'm in control, I swear.
Exactly. But when we can let go of that too, then all of a sudden we get the real meaning of like not just sangha, but what's a real relationship like? What can it be, right? It doesn't have to be draining, you know. It doesn't have to be like super difficult. It's not necessarily always comfortable, right? Like that's for sure. But it can be incredibly supportive, right? And it can be reinvigorating.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to be seen, you know, to take that jump and say, this is not comfortable for me, but I want to be seen fully for what's happening right now.
Right.
and to not be rejected, actually, which is the fear. The fear is that if I reveal myself, that people are going to push me away. People are going to be disgusted. They're not going to, they're not going to see me for who I want to be seen, which is like this glorious, brilliant, beautiful person who can do anything that they put their mind to. Right? But yeah, that I can be my kind of messy and even a lot of times effed up self, and be completely embraced. And
oh, right. Yeah. It's
just
like a trust, it's a trust fall,
trust.
right? Or just like, and they'll it's beautiful. And I gotta say, I have not experienced that in all of my sort of social groups, but I do know that is something that I've experienced strongly within Sangha.
Me too.
Right. I know that like, folks aren't perfect. I get it. But like, I'm just saying, like, I've really experienced that firsthand repeatedly, again and again, and the goodness of all of these beings and how their practices and their commitment to these practices are paying off, not just for themselves, but for all of the beings in their life. I can see how they're relieving suffering, right? Yeah. Because I can feel my own sort of suffering being relieved, through that presence, through that seeing clearly and reflecting clearly,
And it's a form of generosity too, like when we can offer up exactly where I'm coming from right now, which is scary, then we are giving someone else an opportunity to provide generosity and to practice generosity. And so in our efforts to become healed, we're allowing other people to heal and then do their own healing, because gratitude really is like so powerful on both ends of the act. And so, yeah, maybe that's going to be a good thing for me to think about this week. It's that, when I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable, I'm allowing other people to practice good deeds, to practice good actions.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Win-win.
Oh, can I show you something? We have like 2 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I want to show you something. I'll be right back.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. I get to look at the beautiful picture wall. It's really fun. I see one of a stoplight.
The red lights. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's hard to see, I guess, but okay. So this is at my desk, right?
Yeah.
And this is a French horn player.
Yeah.
Just like our friend Sue.
That's right.
And this is like a green Tara. Green Tara playing the French horn, right? Okay, yeah. Because I kind of, I sort of draw a relationship between Sue there and Tara. Yeah. But at the top, look at it's a quote from a poem by Sue. And it says, you can do it. Support is there. Right?
Yes.
It's that's the part that got me. That's why I ran off and got it, right? Because she wrote this beautiful poem, and the whole point of it was you can do it and support is there. Yeah. Right?
We're not going anywhere. Yeah.
No, and that's what our friends in the Sangha and friends outside even are helpful, right? They can help us get there. We can walk each other.
We can walk each other home. Oh, Daniel, thank you for being such a brilliant friend. I am deeply, deeply grateful for our connection and being able to chat every week about Dharma. It's changed my life. It's wonderful.
It's beautiful. Mine too. The feelings are completely mutual.
Yay. Well, Daniel, I think next week we're talking to the wonderful Judy, right?
Yes, that is next week, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Is it? Let me just double check.
Okay, that's probably a good idea. We don't want to get anyone's hopes up.
Yeah, I think it is next week. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about, I believe, to some extent, shamanism and modern mysticism.
Woo! I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna
Me
be fun.
too. I've been so curious ever since I heard about Judy the first time. I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out who this person is.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be real good.
It is. I'm
Well,
looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thanks, Daniel, and thank
Take
you,
care,
everybody.
Jac. Be
Yes, take
well.
care. Bye.